Hi, welcome in. My name is Ro. I'm a project manager turned content creator, and in today's video, I would like to share my favorite Notion features with you. This can be particularly helpful if you're trying to decide whether Notion is something for you, or if you're trying to discover new features in Notion that you might not have heard of before. I split this video up in different categories ranging from basic features of Notion into more advanced things like integrations and embeds and mobility and stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to always pop in the comments down below because I'm more than happy to continue our chat after this video is already posted. And if you have any specific Notion questions, feel free to also pop them in the comments because I might be using this comment section as inspiration for future Notion tutorials. With all of that being said, let's actually dive into my Notion setup so that I can tour my favorite Notion features, actually showing you how I'm using them in Notion as well. Welcome to my Notion setup. This is my Notion 2025 template. If you're interested in an in-depth tour into this template, I do actually have a video. I'll make sure to link it in the description box down below if you're interested. It's also on my channel as the pinned video, so it should be easy to find. But let's actually start with my favorite Notion features. And the first one is the most obvious one, and that is the ability to create different pages. I have made a little menu, but basically these are just URLs or direct links into pages. And I really like that I can actually organize my life into different pages. For instance, I have a hobbies page, which even links to more pages. And I like the idea of being able to make sure that every page has a similar style, but at the same time has a different feeling to it so that I always know where I am or what I'm working on, and I can kind of compartmentalize the information that I have in my brain. I also really like the fact that with all the other features of Notion, you can actually make every single page have a very different purpose. So my hobbies page is just a navigation page. This page on its own, I will probably only go here if I plan on opening any of the following pages, which for instance, if I go to my library, it will actually open my book tracker page, which as you can see, looks vastly different from the hobbies page itself, which is just a navigation page. And this is something that I think for me sets Notion apart compared to having a physical notebook, where linking pages like this or being able to use a page as a navigation page, but make it this interactive is something that a physical journal will just never be able to do for me, but helps me so much in structuring and organizing my brain. Then the second one, which again is relatively obvious, is the feature of blocks. So if you're in your Notion setup and you actually type a / command, you will get a list of all the blocks in Notion. And I started using Notion, I think if I remember correctly, in 2020 or 2021. And ever since, Notion has added so many more blocks. As you can see, while I'm talking, I just keep scrolling. There's all of these embeds, all of these tools, everything that is just linked to Notion as a block. And the fact that it is such a modular system, and also on top of being a modular system, a flexible system, which allows you to use different setups on different pages, having repeated blocks, I'll get into that in a little bit, but stuff like this is so incredibly useful when you're trying to build a Notion setup that works for you. And the fact that it almost feels like a Lego setup where you'll have all these different building blocks and then you get to build something that works for you is something that I absolutely love about Notion. Then, like I said, it's a very flexible interface. And what I mean by that is that if you have a block, you can just drag it around. You can just move it around on your pages. If I want my current reading to show up over here, I can actually move it. If I want it back over here, I can move it. And the fact that I don't have to commit to a specific setup and I can just move it around as I'm one, building it, but also two, as I'm using it. I remember the first version of my hobbies page looked different than what it does now. And I realized while I was using it that the navigation didn't feel natural. And then I just moved some blocks around instead of having to build an entirely new page, which I think is the one thing that prevented me from ever getting into bullet journaling, was the fact that as soon as you decide on a page layout, that's what you're stuck with. Whereas in Notion, you can always just hover over the context menu and then drag it to another place, even in between pages. So if I wanted to move this button to my home dashboard, I could just grab it and then put it on my home dashboard. Easy as that. And then lastly, I already kind of touched upon it. This is again a very basic feature of Notion, but the customization options. I really like the fact that I get to set banners and little icons for all my pages, because if you look at all my pages, you'll see that I have a very similar style, but actually the gradient at the top is slightly different for every single page. And then I have a different icon that I just got from Canva, and then I made sure that it had the right color to fit my aesthetic. I really like being able to customize this fully. If you watch my 2024 or my 2023 setup in Notion, it looks vastly different from what you can see here. And something that I really like about this is that I also get to switch aesthetics every once in a while. And I just, with a very easy overhaul, can transform my Notion from the beige girly aesthetic that I have right now, maybe to the more corporate aesthetic that I had in 2024. Now that we've covered the very, very basic features of Notion, I think it is time to move on to the next section, and that is databases, aka the powerhouse of Notion. And I think the moment that databases clicked in my brain was the moment I knew that I was never going to move away from Notion anymore, because it just works. And I know that's not going to work for everyone. This is like the one thing that I tell people if they're trying to decide if Notion is something for them, and that is, are you a database thinker? Do you enjoy categorizing and labeling information in your brain? Do you enjoy putting information into boxes and like categorizing them together or grouping them together so it makes sense for you to find? Because that is the power of Notion. And I'm actually pretty proud of my database setup for my 2025 setup, so let me show you, because I have bundled all of my databases on one page. I have core databases for all the types of information that I want to store in my Notion. So I have a projects database and a task database and a content database for all my video production. I have an income forecast for my content creation business. I have a goals database, etc., etc. And everything that you see in the rest of my Notion pulls from all of these databases. And I love this. This just makes so much sense for my brain to be able to put things in a big table, like a big Excel table, and then be able to pull from that in other places in my Notion. And I think that is immediately a very nice bridge into the next best thing about databases, not just being able to organize your thoughts and organize your information in very customizable, let me add that, very customizable databases, so you can decide what kind of fields, tags, embeds, whatever you want to add into that database, you can build it up completely yourself, meaning that you don't have to use the same properties as you're using for another database in your system. And why is this so powerful? Well, as you can already see on my home dashboard, you can actually see that I have a today list. This is my to-do list of all the things that I need to do today, including their like respective life area, so to say, and the status, which I can immediately click and change if I needed to. And actually I can change this to in progress because I'm currently recording this video. As you can see, it also moved down because I have this list sorted by status so that the tasks that I haven't done yet always show up at the top. This is one of those things that, again, it's such a simple thing to be able to view that task database, like that massive database where all my tasks live. It's this very large, basically Excel sheet that then transforms into this very simple, intuitive list that only shows the tasks from today and shows them in order of like what I still need to do for the day. Then that same database is also displayed in my this week view, which shows the same information but in a week view. And again, this is such an important thing for me as to why Notion is so powerful, because I don't have to duplicate information to see it in a different way. This is even better with Notion Calendar, because let me show you what I can do because I have one single database with all my tasks. So welcome to my Notion Calendar. This is where I time block. This is where I plan my things for my day. And these blue blocks actually come from my content database. So that is my content planning that I make. This is also published on my website as my actual schedule. So I only have to fill in my schedule in one place, and then it immediately shows up in my own personal calendar, and it shows up on my website as my schedule for people to see. And I can see it in my Notion itself when I'm like actually planning things on my business tab. And then the gray things are actually tasks from my task database, which I then get to put in my calendar as time blocks to see when I'll be working on it and how long I want to take for it. The best thing here is that my to-do list for the day is actually first prioritized by order of which it shows up, basically just by the time that I'm doing it, and then by status. When I start my day in the morning, my to-do list is actually organized the same way as I have my tasks in my calendar, which is such a game changer for productivity. And again, I feel like this point, this is just becoming a Notion fangirl video, but honestly, what did we expect when this video was titled Favorite Things About Notion? But stuff like this, not having to do this in different tools, has been a massive game changer for my workflow. Then other views of the database, like I already showed you, is the gallery view. So for instance, my book tracker uses a database. Again, it's just a setup of a table that I can then see in gallery view, which actually allows me to add the book covers and makes it feel like a digital library. And even being able to customize this per different view of the database is super, super helpful, because as you can see in the currently reading category, you can also see my progress, but on all the other books that's hidden, because it wouldn't be useful to see 0% progress on down all of the books that I haven't read yet. And then a final view of databases that was recently added, which is unfortunately locked behind a paywall, so you do have to get Notion Pro for this, but I genuinely believe it is full on worth it, and that is charts. This is something that I have been using a lot in my habit tracker and in my like goal review dashboard, because I do a little journal every single day, and the data that I get from all my journal entries is displayed in this big dashboard. So this is my habit tracker. Here you can see all the habits that I'm tracking and how I'm doing on them. Then I have my emotional journal, my activities, how I was doing, and this is all very easy to review data rather than having to go into an Excel table and trying to figure out how I was feeling for what percentage. And then lastly, we also have this graph, which is my pain score throughout the year. As a person with chronic pain, it's important to track my pain, and it's very interesting to see how it goes up and down over time. And the fact that this across a whole year will just change and update, and then eventually, as you can see here now, I see all the individual dates, but I could change this as well to display it as per month or something. And I think this is just one of those things where, yes, of course, Excel can do this too, but Excel cannot do a lot of the other things that Notion can, and I'm really happy that Notion now has these charts because it allows you to basically keep everything in one place. So the place where you already journal, you might as well also do your habit tracking there, and then you might report on it like this. And then lastly, something that I really enjoy is one of two things, actually. They're kind of related to each other, and that is relationships and roll-ups between databases. And this is something that once you understand how it works, it is extremely powerful. So the easiest way that I can show you relations between two databases is actually showing you the book database, which holds all my books that I'm reading, and the author database or the genre database, because those are separate databases that I have linked together. So the genre database is actually a separate database that lives on my database page that I showed you earlier. And then I have related properties in here, so I can basically select all the things in that genre database as a property in my reading database. So as you can see, I can quickly see young adult, fantasy, and dystopian. If we click on young adult, it will actually open the page in my other database, so that's the genre database, and you can see all the books that are linked to it, and we can even see that in a gallery view as well. This way you can actually link databases together, meaning that you again don't have to repeat information, but you can simply just make sure that it shows up in the right place. A roll-up is basically a step further where you will actually display items from the other database into your current view. And I do have an example of this, but it is not in my personal Notion setup, but it is in my Sims legacy trackers that I make, so I'm quickly gonna grab that and I'll show you. So I have opened the core databases in one of my Sims trackers, and I'm gonna need you to bear with me for a second because I feel like I almost need to explain what you're seeing to explain the roll-up feature properly, but trust me, this is so worth it once you understand how it works. So I have a big database in this specific Notion setup, which is called the timeline database. This is for a very specific Sims challenge where you play through all the decades. Basically, every single decade has this big long page where every 4 Sims days represents a year. What you can see here is that you can see the years. It starts in like 1300 something, and then it goes to the 20th century, and then it goes all the way to like 1900, and then eventually the 2000s. That is this database. This database simply holds like all the years and the days in game. And I have linked this specific database to my other database, which I will show you. It's the Simfo. So that is like all of the Sims that will be living in your gameplay file. So let's say I make a new Sim. His name is Jack. So now that Jack exists, let me actually go into the timeline database. If you're actually going to use this template, not that I expect any one of you watching this channel to be using this template, but who knows, if you are going to use this, I'll do a better tutorial. This is simply just to show the roll-up feature. But over here, you can now say that maybe, let's say on your first day in your game on Monday, the first day in 1301, Jack was born. So I can now select Jack here. This is just a simple relationship. So again, like I've shown you in the book tracker, I am now able to select something from the other database. So I'm able to select an entry from the other database in this database. That's a relation. However, if I now go to Jack's card, you will see that in baby, which is like the life stage that he was a baby at, it shows the year. We didn't need to select this. I didn't click this. It automatically showed it. If you have two linked databases, what you can do is you can say, hey, database feature, if I link this specific card, can you actually pull all the other information from this field? So what we can now say here is the relation is the baby link. The property that I want to have showcased in this field is the year, and I want to see the original value. I could also change this. Let's say that I, instead of seeing the year, I would like to see what decade is linked to it. I can change it to the linked decade, and then it shows Middle Ages. For me personally, understanding roll-ups properly was something that did take a little while. For some reason, it really needed to click in my brain, but I do think if you're building more complex Notion systems, this feature is going to come in so useful because being able to display information from one database into another is so extremely useful. Then we are moving on to what I called productivity tools. So this is basically anything that I think enables more productivity in Notion. And the first one is synced blocks. Something that I really appreciate when we're talking about productivity is efficiency and not having to do multiple things over and over again. And something that I really like for Notion is the synced block feature. And I again grabbed the Sims template for this simply because it's the easiest way to show you what I mean. So this is a very specific Sims challenge that takes from D&D and then basically makes a Sims version. And something that I built is a dice board where you can roll dice with buttons in Notion, and then it will tell you like what you rolled and what the outcome of that is. It is very nice to have this on the main dashboard. However, if you're actually playing this challenge, you're probably going to be on your generational page because this is like your actual gameplay page. In this challenge, you also pick a subclass. So let's say that you're going to pick the College of Arts subclass, you're going to embark on that journey, and then it's going to automatically fill your page with the relevant information for that class. And as you can see, there is red borders around both of these blocks, and that means they're synced blocks. You can see that dashboard here again. This is literally the same board that you see on the home screen. So if I change something in here, it will also change it in the home screen. But also if I change something on the home screen, it will also change it in here. This allows me to very easily make modifications or adjustments throughout the entire template with only having to edit one thing in one place. The same goes for this block where you can basically see the entire character sheet and all the goals and quests for this character. I have a big page where you can actually read through all the character information to help you decide which subclass you're gonna play, and then just clicking on this button automatically adds a copy of that specific block from the College of Arts into this one so that you can update all your goals and everything. And then if you later review all your character sheets, they will actually have your updated information as well. Then another thing that I really enjoy for productivity is sometimes we have to give context for things. And I'm using a Sims tracker for this. I'm using the same one that I had open just now. And that is being able to add context in toggles, being able to have information that is collapsible, and being able to add things that are optional for people, but you don't always want to see. This is something that, again, I think I would miss highly if I ever moved to a physical journal, and something that I miss in a lot of other productivity tools is the fact that you can actually have the information on your dashboard without it cluttering up the space because you can simply collapse it if it's not needed. And then the last thing, as you might have noticed in this setup, or if we go all the way back to my home hub, you will actually see that something that I really love is the callout feature in Notion. That is basically that border that you can see around all of my blocks. I really like the block feature in Notion, being able to build up things like Lego, but at the same time, if there's not a physical border around it, my brain will just consume everything as one big thing. And I think for productivity purposes, it really helps you to draw your focus towards the right thing on your page and the one thing that you actually want to see. And putting like very simple borders around it just helps. So almost all of my other blocks, like my tables and my calendar views and stuff like that, will live in a callout block simply because it helps me sort of categorize or make the layout of my page clear for my brain. A really nice feature that Notion actually added, I think a year or two ago, is I remember the day when in Notion, if you wanted to make multiple columns like I have here, so I have my left, my middle, and my right column, if you wanted to do that, you would have to go through like wizardry. to get it. Nowadays, you can just type slash and you can start typing column, and then you can divide your page in 2 to 5 columns, which is so incredibly useful if you're trying to build page layouts like I'm doing here. Then another feature that I think is super useful is the sharing and collaboration features. So not only are you able to add comments to every page with the little comment button here at the top, you can even view comments that are made on a page. You can also relatively meticulously manage permissions for people. So I have my little business page, which holds everything that I need to know for my business. Then over here, you can see my campaign pipeline. You can also see again, it's a synced block because this block actually lives on my campaigns page. That page on its own, I never view because I always see this version and I just see it on my main dashboard. However, my management actually has permission to view that campaigns dashboard, and they can actually see my campaigns that are going on. And this is our pipeline of sponsorships that we're working on. I also have a content pipeline, which you can see over here, which is also shared with my management. But I also have a specific version of this content pipeline where all of my packed legacy episodes, which is the Let's Play that I play for The Sims on my gaming channel, is shared with my editor. So my editor can actually update my Notion pages to let me know the status of when she has edited something, when something needs a review. I will see it in my main content pipeline because the videos just live in here, but she is seeing a separate page, which I can actually show you because that might just be a bit easier for your imagination on what this looks like. But this is the Pack Legacy dashboard. This is what my editor sees. So she only sees the Pack Legacy episodes. She doesn't see any of my other videos. She can see it both in board view and in calendar view so that she can see when an episode is going live. Right now, they're all scheduled on Sundays, but specifically when both of us have holidays, we move things around. And then it allows both of us to keep track of the workflow. She can just move things in here. And she can even write comments, like if she has any recording or editing notes or something. And then I will just view this on my business dashboard without needing to share my entire business space with her. I can still share a part of a database so that she can continue working with me and collaborating with me. Speaking of collaboration, this collaboration is also real time, which I think again is something extremely useful. I used to work as a project manager. I used to run my projects in Notion, and it was super helpful that both me and the team could view a backlog of our work, and we could simultaneously move and add things, and it would just work and show up on both of our pages at the same time. Then something that I've already kind of mentioned earlier, but the list of integrations for Notion is at this point actually pretty long. So if you type a slash, you will open the block view, and then if you scroll all the way down, you actually get to your embeds and integrations. Embeds are basically just things that you can add into Notion, literally like a view of the thing, and then you can embed it into your Notion. So you can embed your Google Drive or your Google Maps or your Miro boards or your Jira or your Trello or your Slack. This is specifically useful if you're working for a corporate that is using all of these apps. But I think, for instance, your Google Drive is super useful if you use that on the daily as well. You can even have synced databases with GitLab, Jira, GitHub, Asana, and Jira Sync, which I think is, again, very useful if you're using any of those tools and you're working with both Notion and the other tool. And then there is also imports from a ton of places that you're working on. If you're working in any of these apps, you can just import your information into it. And then I also know that Notion actually has a really big integrations library. So for instance, my library page in my Notion here is synced to my Book Fusion, which is a e-reader app that you can use on your mobile devices, and then it syncs automatically between the two. If you're curious to learn more about that, I do have a whole separate video on it, but basically there is an integration with Notion and Book Fusion, and I know that Notion actually has integrations with a bunch more things. I will make sure to leave a page in the description box with like very well known or very well used Notion integrations, but let me know in the comments if you have a very specific favorite Notion integration, because I always love learning about more of them. And then we've arrived at the last category, which is mobility and publishing. And the first thing is that I really like is that you can use Notion on your mobile phone or your iPad as well. It doesn't work as intuitively as it does on your computer. So obviously I would still recommend use Notion on your main device. Please be that your computer or your laptop. But it is very nice to have a version of Notion on your phone. So I have like a specific page for my mobile to-do list. I can quickly show you. It looks very simple. This is it. This is my mobile page. It's one column. It looks ridiculous on your computer, but on my phone, it's very easy to use. And this is just my to-do list that I can use on the go. And then something that I really like lastly is that you can actually publish your Notion pages as templates. I might have mentioned it a couple of times. I have a really big template collection for Notion templates, and you can actually check them out on my website that I've linked down below. I have a template shop for Notion, but something that I really like is that I can actually build something in Notion and then share it with you guys. All of my Sims templates are free, all of my productivity templates are paid, but I do have cheaper ones or like smaller ones, and then I also have my full setups that I sell for a little bit of a higher price because you're getting a lot of Notion templates for that. But this is where I basically manage them, but as you can see, these are all my Sims templates that I made in 2024. I'm currently working on the Ultimate Decade Challenge. That's the one that I showed you earlier with all the complicated years. And this is basically all my templates that I just publish for you guys to then download. And this is such an incredible, useful feature of Notion because not everyone has the time or has the skill to build an entirely custom productivity setup for themselves. And by being able to create and share templates, I'm able to share my Notion knowledge with you guys so that you guys can kickstart your Notion setup. Like I said, if you want to see a full tour of my Notion 2025 setup, and if you're interested in the templates that I'm selling, everything is linked in the description box down below. And then this covers my video on my favorite features of Notion in 2025. If you have any additional things or features that you really love about Notion, again, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you're not subscribed to my channel yet, I make content about productivity, lifestyle, traveling, stuff like that. So if you're interested to follow along, feel free to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everyone!